Hello, my name is Tamara Greer, and I am the Instructional Services and the Reference Librarian here at the Cleveland State Community College Library. And today we're going to talk about Boolean operators and how you might be able to use them in your searches. So a Boolean operator is just a way that searchers can help make their search more precise. So in a Google search, you go in and you just put something in the search bar and you get what you get. When you're doing library research, especially when you're doing more intricate library research as you progress further in your academic career, your search results have to become more precise. And Boolean operators is one of the ways that we make those searches more precise. So let's look at our first Boolean operator. And for this example, we've just done a very simple example, a very silly example right now. Say you're wanting to look for haunted houses. We see our diagram in front of us and is going to be used to narrow down your results. So everything to the left in the green represents if you just did a search for ghost in your database, you would get that set of examples. And if you just did to the right a search for house, everything in blue would be what you get for that search. When you use and to combine those two terms, instead of getting everything in the green and everything in the blue, you actually get that stuff in the brown there. And that's the intersection between all of the articles in a database that contain both the word ghost and the word house. Let's take a minute and we're going to go out to one of our library databases and we're actually going to put together a search string using and just so that you guys can see how this is going to work. So we've gone out here to one of our EBSCO databases. The only reason we're using that is just their search bars work a little bit differently. It's going to be easier for me to start adding things and you guys to see what's happening. So let's say we're looking for information about the Easter Day uprising in Ireland in 1916. We go through and we figure out which one of those words are going to help us find things in a library. So let's put Ireland in and see what happens. You can see we have 256,000 results already. That's obviously way too many. And as we scroll down, nothing that we're looking for. So we'll go down to this next line and you can see that EBSCO does this and Gale does this as well. It automatically defaults to and, but you can click on that box and it'll give you a couple other options if you change your mind. So let's put Easter in here. And now we're down to 334 results. And you can see that it looks like most of these are dealing with the 1916 uprising. But if we just want to be absolutely sure, if we want to narrow it down even further, we can go down to that third line, add 1916, hit search one more time. Now we're down to 149 results, and we can see that all of the top results we are getting are very obviously to do with the Easter uprising in 1916. So that's just a quick example of how and is going to work in your database. So the second Boolean operator that we're going to be talking about is or. We use this to increase our results, where before we use and to narrow them down. With or, we use them to get more results. So you would use them if you have a subject and it could have multiple terms that could give you results in that subject. Use that for plurals. You use that for different variations of spelling of a word. You use it if you just want to make sure you're covering all of your bases. So in front of us, we have our diagram, and you can see both sides of the diagram this time are the same color. And that's because when you run an or search, it actually gets in everything that you put in. So you get, in this instance, you would get pirate and ninja instead of where before we were looking at that very small section in the middle where it's going to be the conjunction of these things. With or, you actually get both boxes. Okay, so let's look at some examples for or. And again, we're using this just because it's easier to kind of see how things work here. So we're going to put both of these in the top box this time. So let's start out, we're looking for information literacy, but we know that it either could be called information literacy or digital literacy. So we're going to just put information in here to begin with and click search. And that brings us up over 1 million results. And then we're going to go off to the side and then we're going to add digital. And that should allow us to get both information and digital results instead of one or the other. So you can see, again, we're over 1 million, but we're now up to 1,300,000. So as you can see, here's digital right here. And here's one actually where we have information and digital in the same thing. But most of these results are only showing one or the other. Either information right here, here's information, or it's showing digital. So again, or is just a great way when you know that something could be called multiple things to get all of those results in at the same time. The last word we're going to talk about for Boolean operators is not. And you're going to use this, again, we're going to narrow things down, but now we're going to use it to exclude a lot of things, where with and, we were wanting to make sure we included stuff. With not, we're excluding things. So this is used in a lot of instances when you know that there's also a word that is going to come up, or a concept or a phrase that's going to come up your search and you don't want it. So for instance, if you are running a search on cats, but you know a lot of times when you look at cat results, you're also going to get kitten results, but you don't want to see the kitten results. That's when you're going to use not. So you know that you have this one term, you only want to search for that term, but you also know that a lot of times if you use that term, another term is going to come up. Or if, for instance, there's a word that has two very different meanings, then you might be able to find a way to exclude that secondary meaning with the use of not. Okay, so let's say I'm doing some research about searching. So I've put searching into my database and I click on search, and you can see it gives me a lot of returns. It gives me over 36,000 returns. Obviously that's way too many for me to go through. So I only want to be looking at searching for what people in the academic field are doing. I don't want to be looking at anything else. So let's tell it not, and then let's tell it we don't want it to look at, or we don't want it to give us results for either Google or Wikipedia. That's a much more personal search. So you can see we're at 36,000 results. We've put in Google, or we've put in searching, we've put not in Google or Wikipedia, and then we click on search. And you see it doesn't bring it down a lot, but it does bring it down some, 34,000. So if I was continuing this, that I need to be adding a few more terms. But this is a good way to use not. And you can also see we've used another Boolean operator in the middle here. We've used or to tell it you could call this either one of these things, and I don't want any of it. Another tool that we can use is something called wildcards or truncations. And it basically saves us from having to put in too many words by using or. We talked about or being a way to include different words for the same meaning. Or is also a way to include different verb tenses. It's a way to include singular or plural. Truncation keeps us from having to list out every single verb tense and every single singular or plural there is for a certain word. So you pick whatever word it is, say childhood, but you might also want children, and you get those two words and you look at them and you say, okay, these letters are exactly the same in either one, so I'll keep that chunk, and then I'll put a symbol at the end. So let's just go ahead and do a search real quick, because it's much easier to see it once we've got it in here. So we've got our partial word here at the beginning, and then we've got our symbol at the end, and then let's hit search. And after we've run our search, as we look down at our search returns, we see that each one of these search returns at the very beginning, they all have different words that start with this IMMUN, but that they all end differently. And I don't know about you guys, some of these I would have considered, I would have thought about. Immunity obviously is very obvious, but once we get into result 4, I would never have considered those, but those might actually be very good examples, very good things that I can use for my paper. So truncation is just a really good way to encompass a bunch of words without having to think through an entire string of Boolean operators and keep adding this or this or this or. Okay, another thing that you guys can do, particularly if you know you have a phrase or a title, or you know exactly what something is going to be called and you only want those exact words, is we put quotation marks around something. So instead of saying band and books, We only want it to show that particular phrase when those two words are exactly how I've typed them in the search bar and they are right next to each other. And so the database is not going to give us, here, let's go back. Let's put band and books in. Okay, so you can already see the second return and the third return. Here we have book in the title, but we don't have band anywhere, even in the subject matter. In the third one, it's band and challenge books. It's not those two things together. So let's go back up here and let's put band books in our quotation marks. And as we scroll down, we see that every single time it tells us that it's found that term, it's putting those words exactly how we've typed them right next to each other. So lastly, real quick, we're just going to look at different ways that we might use these Boolean operators to answer our search question. So let's say I'm doing research on how you do library instruction for digital literacy or information literacy in a college environment. So I've gone through and I've picked out my terms that are going to help me find that information. So we're going to start with our information or digital literacy or digital. Here's our or right there. We're over 1 million results, so we're going to say, okay, so let's look at literacy. I've used the next line, and it says and we're going to say search. But that's still 18,000 results. That's a lot. So let's put in, let's use some of our wildcards. All right, so we could have teaching or teachers, we could have instruction or instructors, and we've put or because we both want both kinds of those words, and we hit search. And we're down to 10,000, but you can see this first one is kindergarten or second grade, so we don't want that. We only want academic colleges or universities. So we're actually going to come and we're going to hit this plus sign, and that gives us a whole nother bar. And we're going to put, let's go with, okay, we're going to go with college or university. Okay, and now we're down to 6,000, and you can see that we're getting some returns that are very close to what we need. So that's just a way that you can use all of these Boolean operators, these ands, ors, our truncations, to make a search string that's going to get you really close to what you want. And of course, the library is always here to help. You can see we're back at our library home screen on CougarNet, where we have our library hours, including our library email and our library phone. So if you feel like you have done everything you can do and you still have too many results, or you feel like Boolean is really confusing you one day, or if you're just having any issues with searching, please contact us. We'll be more than happy to help.